now presents a reading of articles and features from USA Today for Friday, February 27th, 2026. Your reader for this hour is Chet Walczyk. I'm glad you were able to join us, and we'll kick it off with a weekend edition and their cover story, which is a little bit off the usual, but I thought it was pretty interesting. So let's give it a shot. Revolution was born in America's historic taverns. Dateline, Haddonfield, New Jersey. An 18th century traveler through the southern part of New Jersey might stop at the Indian King, a respite on a long journey along King's Highway, then and now a main thoroughfare connecting several towns. At the Indian King, that traveler could find a hot meal and a pint of beer or hard cider. They could read the local newspapers at a time before they were delivered to people's homes. A bed for the night, cozy and warm, even though they might find themselves sharing it with a stranger if the inn was particularly busy. And if it was the mid-1770s, that traveler might also hear talk of revolution, men recruiting others to join the militia fighting the British, and for a time, the newly formed state legislature as members met in secret in an upstairs room, safe from the occupying forces farther north. Taverns were the center of civic discourse, said Michelle Hughes, a historian with what is now called the Indian King Tavern and Museum, in the center of a historic town with quaint shops, colonial and Victorian-era architecture, and tree-lined streets not far from Philadelphia. There really were not a lot of other places like that in the Revolutionary era, so taverns were also a hotbed of debate between those loyal to the crown and the people who wanted to break away from England and establish American independence, she said. From the Indian King in New Jersey to the Green Dragon in Boston, to the Raleigh Tavern in Williamsburg, Virginia, and Fraunces Tavern in New York City, taverns played a central role in the American Revolution. They were where colonists argued over taxation and representation, where leaders recruited militiamen, where revolutionaries plotted their next rebellious acts, and where the founders of the budding nation haggled over how to begin to govern its people. Malcolm Purrington teaches history at Northeastern University in Boston, but he's also known as the beer historian. He pointed to one of the most famous revolutionary events as an example of how central taverns, also called inns and ordinaries in colonial times, were to 18th century life. When you think about Paul Revere's ride, he and fellow riders William Dawes and Samuel Prescott stopped at taverns along the way, Puritan said. They were on horses, and everyone comes out. The Minutemen are ready, but there's still hours to go before dawn, and they can't go back to sleep, so they go to the taverns. Boston's Green Dragon was first established in 1654, and it was a favorite spot of Revere's, who lived nearby, and signer of the Declaration of Independence, John Hancock, whose brother also lived close by. According to Daniel Webster, the 19th century historian and statesman, Revere's ride happened because British plans to invade Lexington and Concord were overheard at the Green Dragon, which is open to this day. Taverns in big cities like Philadelphia and Boston typically catered to different clientele, a reflection of cities' social stratification, much like the difference today between a sports pub and a wine bar. But in towns like Concord and Lexington in Massachusetts, Haddonfield in New Jersey, and Williamsburg in Virginia, tavern patrons represented a cross-section of society, Hughes said. Travelers and locals, tradesmen and merchants, the working class and the wealthy would all spend time elbow to elbow at tables crowded close together. They were a great social equalizer, she said. They were the centers of town for almost everything, Puritan said. They were where you got your news. Before the Postal Service was formalized, that was where mail came. They might function as Masonic temples, hosting meetings and rituals. Hughes explained that it was a wild meeting at the Indian King in 1777 that New Jersey's legislature first voted to designate it a state, not a British colony. The government then was always on the move, added Linda Hess, Indian King's education and outreach coordinator and a retired schoolteacher. Fearful of being captured and charged with treason for opposing British rule, American leaders would gather in private homes or taverns. Haddonfield was a crossroads, Hess said, a town with vibrant markets that drew people from surrounding communities. So the Indian King was also a place where people would conduct business, post flyers for items they were selling, and meet people coming from afar. Taverns then functioned on so many levels, Hughes said. Traveling musicians would come through towns and play. There were no libraries, yet, so people might trade books. Some hosted visiting lecturers or troupes putting on plays. Some taverns even functioned as courthouses. The Queen's Head Tavern was a favorite meeting place for the Sons of Liberty, a secret society that advocated for independence. Now called Fraunces Tavern, it was a hub of revolutionary activity, a favored hangout for Alexander Hamilton, George Washington, and other founding fathers before, during, and even after the war. The revolution would not have taken place without taverns, Puritans said. They were places that tied people together. People like Ben Franklin and Sam Adams and the other founders needed to generate this idea of a nation, and you needed a way to spread news, to drum up support, to unify people. Franklin was brilliant at doing that through newspapers, he said, as were Thomas Paine and Thomas Jefferson, whose soaring rhetoric galvanized colonist support. But you still needed a place to gather, to break down social barriers, and to give people the idea that they could be citizens, not colonists. That difference from subject to citizen had to happen, and it happened in these places. That was a cool story. What'd you think? And let's stay with another pleasant story. Airline staff replaces boys' Pokemon cards. A lost binder of Pokemon cards turned into a collection of 15,000 for a 7-year-old named Reed after United Airlines employees caught wind of the situation and started donating their own cards to replace what he had lost. The donation effort was sparked after United Airlines' social media team came across a Reddit post from Reed's dad, Graham, about the lost cards, which were accidentally left in a terminal at the Denver International Airport. Despite multiple people on Reddit and airport employees searching for the binder, it could not be located. Graham, who requested the last name of the family not be posted for privacy concerns, told USA Today that they expected to just cut their losses and replace Reed's collection, though his wife did file a lost item report. But then, United Airlines reached out. According to the airline and Graham, United's customer service and social media teams figured out that the dad's Reddit post corresponded with Reed's mom's lost ticket and internally checked with employees to see if anyone would be interested in donating cards. They have put two and two together, asked if they could do something, if they could ask some employees if they'd like to replace this kid's collection, and apparently it just detonated, Graham said. And the response was so overwhelming that they were like, oh, this is going to be a thing. Initially, the family was told on a call beforehand that United Airlines estimated Reed would receive around 2,000 cards, a number that seemed too many to deal with, Graham said. When the family arrived at Denver International Airport on January 19th for a card exchange and celebration, however, the number was over 15,000. United Airlines employees presented the cards to Reed, which were flown over to Denver and weighed 90 pounds. Jonna McGrath, Vice President of United Airlines Denver Hub and present at the celebration, wrote in an email that the request for cards reached across the world. we were able to gather more than 15,000 Pokemon cards from employees as far away as Hawaii and Ireland to help him start a new collection, McGrath wrote. When United employees heard the story of how Reed lost his binder, they immediately jumped to action. When we saw the opportunity to help Reed and his family, we were eager to step up, even if it meant finding a new home for some of our beloved Pokemon cards. Reed was shocked at the number of cards, and his parents were in tears, Gramps said. While Reed was thrilled to get the cards, a lot of joy also came from how happy it made contributors, Gramps said. As happy as he was, the employees, both who were there in person to deliver cards and talk to him about it, as well as everyone who sent in cards, wrote notes from all over the world talking about their love of Pokemon, Gramps said. Those letters are like the coolest part, because that's not just a physical gift, but it's the thinking behind it. It was pretty remarkable, Graham said. Since receiving the cards last month, Reed has hosted a Pokemon card trading party with his class at school, giving each student a bag stuffed with 60 cards to trade and play with. That has gotten more of his peers into Pokemon and given him more people to trade with. But there's still a lot more to be done, Graham said. The family plans to donate more cards to others to teach Reed about paying it forward. We still have 14,000 cards, Graham said. We are not going to give all of them away, but again, my son has to learn the value of having received such generosity, been the recipient of generosity, and the role he needs to play as the giver of something generous. For now, Reed is still picking his way through the collection, which is living in the family's living room at present. This volume means he always has something new to explore, Gramps said. He doesn't get tired of his current collection. He has a lot to trade away. I think that's where his joy is right now. The cards span decades and types, including ones that are monetarily valuable in the eyes of collectors. While those are fun for Reed to have and examine, it also signifies to Graham how willing strangers were to help his son. These are not just random bottom-of-the-pack cards. Some of them are sufficiently rare and meaningful, were clearly meaningful enough to people that they were in hard plastic cases, Graham said. This isn't just people refilling the volume of cards. It was like, this guy was my favorite, or this was my favorite card when I was a kid, and I want you to have it now. Though Graham himself is not well versed in Pokemon world, he has seen how people involved with it rallied around his son. He added that the social element of the game offers both kids and older individuals a shared interest that brings joy and community. There are a lot of adults that were very interested in it, and it's cool that they see themselves in this 7-year-old who has this passion, and they don't want his soul to be crushed or his passion to go away because he lost these cards, Graham said. I think that's the primary reason why people sent in so many of these cards. Well, I have no understanding of this Pokemon phenomenon, but sounds like a good kid, a great family, and a great bunch of United Airline employees. Good stuff. You are listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time is 14 minutes after the hour. And it's time to get back to serious news, or just current news. Trump pushes voting changes. Dateline Washington. In the State of the Union speech, President Trump demanded passage of country-saving legislation that he says will protect the 2026 midterm elections from fraud and illegal voting. The cheating is rampant in our elections, Trump said in his February 24th address. And the reason they don't want to do it, Trump said of Democrats opposing the Save America Act bill, is because they want to cheat. There's only one reason. Congress should unite and enact this common sense, country-saving legislation right now, Trump said, in calling on Republican Senate Majority Leader John Thune of South Dakota to pass it as quickly as possible. It's very simple, Trump added. All voters must show voter ID. All voters must show proof of citizenship in order to vote. And no more crooked mail-in ballots except for illness, disability, military, or travel. None. Democrats are also afraid the November elections will be skewed by interference, but they say it is the Save America Act itself that would give Republicans unfair advantage by potentially disenfranchising huge swaths of eligible Democratic voters, especially minorities and women. Stakeholders from across the political spectrum agree that the bill, already moving through Congress, would represent one of the most sweeping federal interventions in election administration in many years. But that's about the only thing on which they agree. So here's what we do know. What would the bill do? The Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, or Save America Act, passed the GOP-led House of Representatives on February 11th, but faces a shaky future in the Senate. Previous versions failed to gain traction in both chambers last year. This latest iteration, which builds on the 2024 version by adding a voter ID provision, must get 60 votes to pass. Supporters, including Trump and Republican lawmakers, say the bill would ensure that only U.S. citizens registered to vote, that photo voter ID are required in federal elections, and that states clean non-citizens from their voter rolls. So why do Democrats oppose it? The bill has raised alarm among Democrats, voting rights groups, and election law experts who said it would disenfranchise potentially millions of Americans by making it harder to register to vote and cast ballots. The bill would place new rules on mail-in voting that opponents say would largely favor Republicans, who are less likely to vote by mail, including requiring people to provide proof of citizenship when registering and voting in federal elections. Another concern is a fear that married people who change their surnames might have trouble proving they're eligible to vote because names on their proof of citizenship, a birth certificate for example, may not match the name on their photo ID, such as a driver's license. Representative Pete Aguilar, Democrat of California, who chairs the House Democratic Caucus, said Democrats also oppose the bill because it would require that all state voter rolls be turned over to the Department of Homeland Security, where they could potentially be misused. So let's fact-check Trump's claims. Trump has long argued that Democrats want to evade strict voter ID safeguards because they want undocumented immigrants to be able to vote for them. Democrats strongly deny that. Research shows U.S. elections have only a minute amount of fraud, and that illegal voting that does not change outcomes. A study by the Brennan Center for Justice at New York University found only 3 votes out of every 1 million cast were fraudulent. Trump also said such requirements are polling at 89%, including Democrats. The White House did not immediately respond to a USA Today request for comment about Trump's statements, including what poll he was citing. But Trump has in the past referred to an August Pew Research Center survey that found that 83% of American adults support requiring voters to show government-issued photo ID to vote, including 71% of Democrats and 95% of Republicans. Surveys for years have shown broad support for voter ID, according to Amy Sherman of the Poynter Institute's nonpartisan PolitiFact fact-checking research center. But surveys typically don't capture nuance, often presenting voter ID as a yes or no choice, she said. For example, Sherman said in a PolitiFact analysis of Trump's speech, the Pew survey asked if people supported requiring all voters to show government-issued photo identification to vote. It did not ask if they supported it did not ask if they supported requiring mail ballot voters to submit a copy of their ID along with the mail ballot, a provision in the Save America Act, Sherman said. She said the survey also did not ask about the documentary proof of citizenship requirements in the legislation. Most states already have some form of voter ID requirement. The U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, an independent, bipartisan agency established by Congress in 1957, found in a September 2018 report that states across the country have enacted voting procedures that wrongly prevent some citizens from voting and have a disparate impact on voters of color and poor citizens. On February 23rd, 80 prominent conservative organizations signed on to the Save America Act coalition and called on Thune to bring it immediately to the floor for consideration by the full Senate. In their letter, conservative groups like Citizens United and the Election Integrity Network said Thune should enforce a talking filibuster, a maneuver that would force Democrats to debate the measure on the Senate floor and tell the American people why they oppose these key election integrity measures. Thune told Fox News anchor Aisha Hasni on February 25th that he supports the bill and wants to see it come to a vote. We are, right now, in the middle of a government shutdown, so we have got to try and get the government opened up first, Thune said. But in due time, we will get that up on the floor. We will have a vote on it. Thune portrayed the bill and broader election integrity issues as a stark contrast between Republican and Democrats about how they want to handle elections in this country. It's an issue, if I were running as a Democrat in the midterm elections in November, I wouldn't want to have to defend. You are listening to Reading Up Today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time comes in at 22 minutes after the hour. Senate panel grills Trump's choice for Surgeon General. It didn't take long for the topic of vaccines to come up in Surgeon General nominee Dr. Casey Means' confirmation hearing. During the February 25th hearing, members of the Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pension grilled Means on her views about vaccines in relation to measles, flu, and autism. Means, President Trump's nominee for Surgeon General, originally was scheduled to testify before the committee in October, but the hearing was postponed after she went into labor around that time. Some of her positions, including past comments in which she raised skepticism about vaccines, have drawn criticism of her nomination for the office, the New York Times reported. If confirmed, Means would become the nation's top doctor, leading the commission core of the U.S. Public Health Service. In his rounds of questioning, Committee Chair Senator Bill Cassidy, a Louisiana Republican, brought up the ongoing measles outbreaks in the United States. Would you encourage other mothers to have their children vaccinated against measles with the MMR vaccine, Cassidy, who is also a physician, asked. I believe vaccines save lives. I believe that vaccines are a key part of any infectious disease public health strategy, Means said. When Cassidy pressed specifically on whether she would encourage the MMR vaccine, Means said, I am supportive of vaccination. I do believe that each patient, mother, parent needs to have a conversation with their pediatrician about any medication they're putting in their body and their children's body. When asked a similar question on the flu vaccine, Means repeated that she wants patients to have informed consent with their doctor before getting any medication, adding informed consent is part of building trust in public health. The current HHS department also has supported the idea of informed consent. For example, in a recent change of the childhood immunization schedule, HHS officials dropped outright recommendations for certain vaccines and instead move them to shared decision making between parents and healthcare providers. Senator Tim Kaine, a Virginia Democrat, asked Means if she agreed with a statement from HH Secretary RFK Jr., in which he said there is no evidence that the flu vaccine prevents serious disease, hospitalizations, or death in children. Means would not comment, saying she had not seen the quote herself. Setting the Kennedy quote aside, Kaine instead asked directly, "Do you believe that there is evidence that the flu vaccine prevents serious disease and prevents hospitalizations or deaths in children?" "I believe that all patients should talk to their doctors," she began. "And so do I," Kaine cut in. "That's not what I'm asking you." After some hesitation from Means, Kaine said, "This is an easy one, doctor." "I support the CDC's guidance on the flu vaccine," she said, adding eventually that it does reduce the risk at the population level. She also was asked about whether she believes vaccines cause autism, both by Cassidy and Senator Bernie Sanders. "The reality is that we have an autism crisis that's increasing, and this is devastating to many families, and we do not know as a medical community what causes autism," Means told Cassidy. "Until we have a clear understanding of why kids are developing this at higher rates, I think we should not leave any stone unturned." Many public health groups and physicians have denounced recently changed wording on the Center for Disease Control and Prevention's website, suggesting that vaccines could be linked to autism, despite decades of evidence showing they are safe. Cassidy added, "There's been a lot of evidence showing vaccines are not implicated." "Do you not accept that evidence?" he asked the nominee. "I do accept that evidence," she replied, but added that science is never settled, and a continued look into what is causing autism is important. In response to Sanders' questions on vaccines and autism, Means said, "Anti-vaccine rhetoric has never been part of my message. I am not here to complicate the issue on vaccines," she said. "I think it's important to just keep it on the table." The idea of restudying potential links between vaccines and autism aligns with long-held sentiments from RFK, who has ordered HHS to determine the cause of autism. Several senators also brought up the hepatitis B vaccine during the hearing. In December, the Kennedy-stacked Vaccine Advisory Board, ACIP, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, said only babies born to moms who test positive for hepatitis B should receive the shot at birth, and other moms should speak with their doctors about the vaccine. Senator Lisa Blunt Rochester, a Delaware Democrat, asked if the hepatitis B vaccine at birth is the most effective way to prevent transmission to the baby with the hepatitis B positive mother. "I believe certainly that is the most effective way," Means said. Senator Angela Alsobrooks, a Maryland Democrat, said a previous tweet from Means read in part, "Hep B vaccine at birth is a crime." "That is not the full tweet," Means rebutted, but adding she supports vaccines and thinks they are part of public health strategy. "This administration is committed to making sure we have the safest vaccine schedule in the world, and that we are continually studying the vaccine schedule, vaccine injuries, making sure we are eradicating conflicts of interest in vaccine research, and doing gold standard science on vaccines," she said. Senator Lisa Murkowski, an Alaska Republican, brought up the issue of the disease being endemic in her state, adding she hopes that demonstrated positive results of vaccines would be communicated by officials, not just the message that everybody needs to consult with their doctor. Means again pushed the importance of shared clinical decision-making on specific vaccines with their doctor so that they can make the best decision for their family. "This is not a condemnation of the vaccine generally, which I am very supportive of. However, I do believe that the thrust toward parents wanting to have the ability to have shared clinical decision-making with their doctor is important when there are conditions like hepatitis B, where there's differential risk amongst different populations, Means said. The Surgeon General is the nation's doctor whose role is to provide Americans with the best scientific information available on how to improve their health and reduce their risk of illness and injury. The Surgeon General brings the best available scientific information to the public by issuing Surgeon General's advisories, calls to action, and reports on critical issues, and communicating directly with the public via a number of communication channels, the HHS adds. Previously, Vivek Murthy served as the 19th and 21st Surgeon General under President Biden and Obama. So who is Casey Means? Dr. Means is a Stanford-educated physician and a New York Times best-selling author with a large online following that has attracted influencer status in certain online wellness spaces, focusing on metabolic health and the prevention of chronic disease. She also is an ally to Kennedy, a proponent of his MAHA, or Make America Healthy agenda. Means graduated from Stanford Medical School and pursued a surgical residency as an otolaryngologist, often called an ENT doctor. She left the residency program in 2018, according to her LinkedIn profile. Means testified that her medical license is unexpired but voluntarily placed on inactive status. You are listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and we turn to the opinion section. And we have a column written by Blake Fontenay. Mr. Fontenay is USA Today's commentary editor, and his piece comes to us under the title, American Democracy Needs College-Educated Conservatives. A lot has changed during the years I've lived on this earth, but maybe nothing more so than attitudes about higher education. When I was young, it was drilled into my head over and over again that a person needed to go to college to get ahead in the modern world. It wasn't until after I had graduated that I heard this statistic, but some research has shown that college graduates make, on average, $1 million more over their lifetimes than people who don't attend college. Lately, though, higher education seems to be taking a beating in the public square. A college education costs too much. It leaves young people saddled with debt at a time in their lives when they can afford it least. There are many trades that don't require a college education. All of those are valid points, and I wouldn't argue with any of them. However, I winced the other day when I was having lunch with a conservative friend and she mentioned a liberal bias among college faculty as another reason to steer clear of America's higher education. Since I wanted to keep her talking so I'd have time to finish my salmon piccata, I decided to play devil's advocate. So what if they are biased? I asked her. Isn't college supposed to be a place where ideas are challenged? She responded that it's unfair because faculty members, in their roles as authority figures, have too much influence over young minds. Our conversation moved on to other topics, but I couldn't help reflecting on that later after we had gone our separate ways. I hadn't wanted to argue with my mouth full, but I couldn't have disagreed more with what she was saying. Although journalism is a field where you learn a lot through on-the-job training and lived experiences, the time I spent at the University of Florida was incredibly helpful for me. I learned about where to find sources of information, the ins and outs of media law, the guidelines for making ethical decisions. However, some of the most important learning I did was outside the lecture halls and libraries. College, for many people, is the first time they have to cope with personal responsibilities without parental supervision. You have to figure out what to eat, when to study, when to go to bed. If you want to stay out all night partying before an exam, you learn firsthand about the consequences of your own decisions. Those who wash out of college because they can't manage time well or learn to discipline themselves still go home with valuable life lessons. You may also meet other people, particularly fellow students who are not like the gang at your old high school. My first apartment in Gainesville was in a complex popular with not only out-of-state students like me, but also international students. In addition to kids from Tampa, Trenton, and Pompano Beach, I got to know people from Morocco, Panama, and Peru. Of course, they didn't all share the same political beliefs as a guy from Nashville, Tennessee, and that was part of what made college both challenging and exciting. Going somewhere and having your views challenged isn't a bug, it's a feature. After all, if a belief can't survive contact with a competing idea, then how strong was it in the first place? Conservative folk hero Charlie Kirk recognized this. Before his assassination in September, he made a career out of visiting college campuses to offer his counterpoints to liberal ideas. Last October, USA Today published a column by conservative professor David Ramadan, who suggested the solution of adding more conservatives to college faculties rather than trying to impose adherence to President Trump's agenda through threats of withheld federal funding. I think Ramadan is right. Most colleges could have more politically diverse faculties. Yet, my friend's suggestion that faculty members carry an oversized amount of authority with students seems quaint these days. Students can fact-check what their professors say on their cell phones in real time. Students are likely, for good or bad, to lean heavily on sources of information that helped form their beliefs in the first place. Authority figures, again, for good or bad, are routinely questioned by young and old alike in our society. That's one of the best parts of our political system. Also, in many, if not most, academic subjects, a faculty member's political views are irrelevant. If I am trying to learn the laws of physics or how different chemicals interact with each other, what difference does it make what my professors do in the voting booth? There's a real danger if conservatives decide as a group that college isn't made for them. Throughout recent history, about a third of Americans have identified as conservatives, another third as liberals, though the numbers fluctuate, with the rest of us floating somewhere in the middle. Even hardcore liberals should understand the danger of significant numbers of conservatives deciding to avoid mainstream campuses. For the reasons I outlined above, colleges help people grow up and become better versions of themselves, regardless of what gets taught in the classroom. There are daunting financial and practical obstacles that discourage many people from attending college. Politics should not be one of the reasons why they do not. If it is, then we are all moving closer to the future envisioned in the 2006 movie Idiocracy, a broken down world where ignorance and sloth are celebrated over knowledge and enterprise. That thought should make us all feel like losing our lunches. You are listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 38 minutes after the hour, and we slide over to the USA Today Money section, which on most Fridays, or lately all Fridays, is the travel and tourism section. So we go with it, and we turn to their feature story. Do not go to Mexico. Security experts, former CIA, warn travelers. Safety while traveling is a non-negotiable. In the wake of a military operation in Mexico that resulted in travelers and locals sheltering in place, those with plans to head south may be wondering whether now is the right time. Nemesio Ruban Oseguera Cervantes, who led Cartel de Jalisco Nueva Generacion and was known as El Mencho, was killed during the Mexican military operation. His death, announced on February 22nd, prompted unrest in Puerto Vallarta and chaos at its airport, as well as Guadalajara's airport. The way that I have studied this organization, it's like a franchise model, a crime group with a franchise model that has different leadership depending on the territories that they control. Guadalupe Correa Cabrera, a professor in the Schar School of Policy and Government at George Mason University, told USA Today. So, it's not clear that just taking out a head of an organization of this type is going to cause, for a very long period of time, events that are very violent in different parts of the country. We really don't know. Most airports in Mexico are now operating normally, the State Department said, as it narrowed its shelter-in-place advisory for U.S. citizens. During an early news conference on February 23rd, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo said the situation has calmed down. However, security experts aren't convinced it's the right time for travelers to gamble. You have a leadership that leaves a vacuum of power, and allegedly the reasoning behind the kingpin strategy is that you take out a head of an organization or one of the leadership, and then there is a fight for control of this leadership, and the organization weakens itself. And because they are in continuous confrontation with other groups, that kind of generates violence, added Correa Cabrera, who also co-directs the Terrorism, Transnational Crime, and Corruption Center at George Mason University. So you ask, is it safe to travel to Mexico right now? It has been a wild 24 hours since this all kicked off, Mike Ballard, Director of Intelligence at security firm Global Guardian, told USA Today. For the most part, the actual resort areas and hotels have been relatively spared from the impact. If you look at Cancun, the roadblocks, they're kind of outside the city limits to try and just make it difficult for police to operate there and as a distraction. But luckily, we have not seen any impact on any of these resorts or hotels that are operating there. And as far as folks traveling to Mexico City, obviously it's a significant destination for business people. Right now, we do not think there's any significant risk of impact there. It's not typically a city that gets caught up in this kind of stuff when it happens. Correa Cabrera echoed that uncertainty, saying there was a lot of fake news and misinformation on social media. People were very confused about what was happening and what would happen in the next few days. She added that the public should remember what happened during previous cartel leadership shakeups. Correa Cabrera said that after the arrest of longtime leader of the Sinaloa cartel in 2024, there was a relative peace in the first few weeks, and then violence started to become very important. At this point, we don't know, so we have to wait and see. Jason Hansen, a former CIA officer and author of Spy Secrets That Can Save Your Life, put it more bluntly. Do not go to Mexico. I do a lot of security consulting, a lot of travel, and I have told people this for the last decade. Do not go to Mexico, he said. It is way too volatile, way too dangerous. Your life is too precious. Your security is too precious. There's a million other beautiful places in the world. However, it's more of a gray area for former intelligence advisor and former CIA officer Doug Patterson. So much of Mexico is still a level 2, right? Which means just use caution when traveling to those locations, he said, referring to the State Department's travel advisory for Mexico overall. For anybody who canceled a trip, I wouldn't judge them for canceling it. For somebody who went, I wouldn't judge them either. Each person has their own decision calculus to figure out how much risk they are willing to take in this time of increased potential risk, he added. The answer is almost always going to be, it depends. What you want it to do is be an active thought process. It's not rooted in fear, but in logic and decision-making. Are tourists being targeted? Experts say the violence tied to leadership struggles is typically not aimed at visitors, but that doesn't mean travelers are immune. They are not targeted. This can be about the loss of leadership within a group that causes important members to try to achieve power, or other groups that want to take control over plazas that were controlled by this cartel. So yes, it's more a collateral victim thing here, Correa Cabrera said. You can be in the wrong place at the wrong time. and that's not something that's good, particularly now. Ballard said that before this week's events, Puerto Vallarta was often considered somewhat insulated because of its tourism-driven economy. Because it is so tourist-heavy, the organized crimes tend to leave it alone. They don't want to poke the bear, he said. But folks are going to have to reconsider the totality of the security landscape in those places. Hansen recommended that those already in Mexico stay in place until it's necessary to move, pointing to movement as the most dangerous part of the process of leaving the state. You are in point A, you're sheltering in place in your 5-star luxury hotel, all is well. 10 miles down the road, you may run into the cartel, and then you're in deep trouble. So it's not worth putting yourself in danger to go to the airport when you're already in a safe location where you have shelter and food. The latest unrest can be potentially significant in how travelers think about Mexico going forward. I think you're going to see potentially a place like Puerto Vallarta become a less popular destination, Ballard said. We have seen the same thing with Acapulco over the last 15 plus years, where it used to be a classic vacation destination. It's been among the highest murder rate cities in Mexico, and it's a place we tell people not to go. He compared the situation with a low probability but high impact risk. It's similar thinking about going to an island for vacation and there's an active volcano. The risk is the odds are very, very small that something happens while you're there. But if they do, it could be catastrophic, he said. And I think we're likely to see similar retaliatory violence come out of those operations in the future. So, I don't think this is a one-and-done situation. We could see this with some frequency in the future. So what should travelers do? Hansen, Ballard, and Pedersen recommended additional precautions for anyone heading to Mexico in the near term. A good friend of mine, also former CIA, he says, "You know what spying is? Spying is common sense on steroids," Hansen said. And the same thing when you're traveling. Have common sense on steroids. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. Ballard also stressed planning ahead for worst-case scenarios. This really enforces the need for folks to do their research, their due diligence to have a plan in case something like this does happen. Establish something like a rally point if family members get separated, or knowing your nearest hospital or police station or fire department. Aside from making double copies of all important travel documents, keeping an eye on your surroundings and up from your phone, Hansen warned against over-friendly strangers offering information to get some in return. We call it give to get. Somebody offers a little detail, so you will offer yours, or they make an assumption, so you correct them, like where you're staying. Don't give away your hotel information or specifics. People can seem friendly, but they may be trying to elicit details. Pedersen recommended registering for the State Department's free Smart Travel Enrollment Program, which can keep travelers up to date on important changes abroad. The other thing it does is it tells the state how many Americans are in a given area, so that if there's need for an evacuation, like there was in Libya during the Arab Spring, it makes that much easier to connect Americans in trouble, he said, adding that it's important for travelers to triangulate information from the government, trusted social media, and local media. He also recommended the app Vigilant and resources from the James W. Foley Foundation, which offers a free downloadable traveler safety guide covering emergency numbers, embassy addresses, allergy lists, and more. For now, experts say that patience and vigilance are the key. The situation may stabilize, or it may not. And again, that app is called Vigilant, Vigilant, and you can find resources from the James W. Foley, Foley Foundation. You are listening to reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time is 50 minutes after the hour. Now here's a piece I bet we were all interested in. This is written by Nathan Diller, USA Today travel contributor. Mr. Diller's piece entitled Rules to Follow on a Nude Cruise. Not everything goes on these unique voyages. Imagine coming home from your next cruise with no tan lines. Swimsuits are standard attire on many cruise ships, but some voyages don't even require those. Nude cruisers allow travelers to sail the high seas au naturel and pack light. The American Association for Nude Recreation promotes the cruises as a unique way to experience nude recreation, offering members options beyond traditional resort or club settings, the association's president, Linda Weber, told USA Today. While the dress code might be non-restricted, it doesn't mean the sailings are a free-for-all on board. There is some etiquette that passengers should be familiar with before boarding. Here's what to know about nude cruises. The first question: what is a nude cruise? A nude cruise is a chartered sailing aboard a major cruise line, offering nudists and naturists the opportunity to enjoy a clothing-optional environment while traveling with like-minded individuals, Weber said. AANR partners with Bare Necessities Tour and Travel, which offers the Big Nude Boat Cruise. The 2026 installment on Norwegian Cruise Line's Norwegian Pearl ship departed from Miami on February 9th. Scheduled stops include the Bahamas, Curacao, Bonaire, Aruba, and more, according to its website, with built-in nude days at sea. And for those of you planning, a 2027 cruise will visit the Bahamas, Puerto Rico, St. Kitts, and Nevis Antigua, and other parts aboard the Norwegian Jewel. Fares start at $2,000 per person based on double occupancy. Weber said AANR does not endorse or promote sexual activity, and that some sailings marked as nude cruises actually fall into the lifestyle or swinger category. Prospective cruisers are encouraged to carefully review cruise offerings to ensure that they are booking a cruise that aligns with AANR standards, she said. Weber said her husband found Bare Necessities cruise a decade ago, and she was drawn to the setting, a change of scenery from those on land, combined with international travel. I have met so many people from all over the world and was immersed in what I call the land of my people, she said. She has heard similar sentiments from other passengers. The sailings offer guests a chance to meet other naturalists in one area and really get to know them, because you are on the ship for a week to almost 2 weeks in some cases. So are guests nude the whole time? They can be, mostly. Guests are generally nude throughout the ship, with the exception of time spent in port and in the evening dining rooms, where attire is required, Weber said. Bare Necessities noted that even guests staying on the ship in port must be clothed when the ship is alongside, including on balconies, until the vessel leaves and the crew announces that guests are free to disrobe, per an FAQ section on its website. When the ship is at sea or anchored in a port, passengers can be nude, unless announcements have been made to the contrary, the company said. Guests can wear casual attire in the dining rooms on the Big Nude Boat, but bathrobes are not allowed. Self-serve buffets, on the other hand, are a clothes-free area. Bare Necessities asks that travelers sit on a towel while nude or in a thong or G-string. A fresh beach towel will be provided in your stateroom each day for that purpose, its website reads. Stacks of smaller towels will be placed throughout the ship outside of common areas in case you arrive without one. Lingerie and so-called fetish wear are not permitted, and no photos or videos of others on board may be taken without consent. Guests must also adhere to no photo zone rules. A full list of policies can be found online. Weber said the cruises are many guests' first experience with social nude recreation. Staying in touch with fellow travelers, it is common to hear how life-changing the experience was, she said. Many choose to book the following year while still on board. And again, for those of you interested, you can check the American Association for Nude Recreation, or AANR, partners with Bare Necessities Tour and Travel. You are listening to reading of articles and features from USA Today for Friday, February 27, 2026, on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We will return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this hour has been me, Chet Walczyk. I'm glad you were able to join. I hope you have a great weekend. I look forward to seeing you the next time. Take care.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of the USA Today. Your reader for this hour is Nancy. It's the Life section, which is Section B. 32nd Actor Awards. New name, same host, Bell chimes in on awards, from Brian Alexander. Kristen Bell has been tripping up over the names of this weekend's Glam Award show, which is a problem since the Frozen star is the host. Bell, age 45, has hosted the Screen Actors Guild Awards twice, including last year's ceremony. Since then, the SAG-AFTRA union, representing Hollywood actors, officially changed the name of their annual celebration to the Actor Awards. So on her third run as host, but first under the show's new name, Bell says it's a group effort to nail the change at the 32nd Annual Awards, which is March 1st on Netflix, 8 p.m. Eastern. Renaming it is a big thing to apply to the old processor, says Bell. There's been a lot of slip-ups, but we politely correct each other when I say the SAG Awards. Nope, it's now called the Actor Awards. Why are SAG Awards now called the Actor Awards? Bell, a proud SAG-AFTRA member for more than 2 decades, says she had nothing to do with the name change. That's not my department and above my pay grade, she says. Yet she's accepting because the rebranding signifies what makes this show different from others in a crowded awards season. The Golden Globes are voted on by a group of foreign journalists who now weigh in on podcasts, TV, and film. Critics' Choice are voted on by critics. The Actor Awards rely on actors to vote on the film and TV performances of their peers. That's what this show is about. That's what makes it unique, Bell says. Some branding genius was like, why not call it the Actor Awards? And they told me it's called the Actor Awards, and I said, let's roll. It has led to a solid comedic fodder, with a show promotion featuring Bell calling every SAG-AFTRA member to let them know about the name change. Bell also will lean into the new name during the show opening for laughs. Will Bell discuss ice or sing Frozen tunes at Actor Awards? Bell has been the only host of the SAG Awards, Actor Awards, starting as first ever host in 2018. While the actors frequently make political statements on the red carpet or during acceptance speeches, Bell, as host, has avoided contentious issues during the monologue. That will continue. It's a political free zone, Bell says. There's something for everyone. There'll be no division on the show. Bell will not burn her fellow stars in the audience during the show. If I roast anyone, it's going to be myself, Bell says. I like the idea of an old vaudeville act where you're just trying to goof, maintain someone's attention, and have them walk away refreshed. In her last hosting gig, Bell changed the classic Frozen song, Do You Want to Build a Snowman, to Do You Want to Be an Actor, to open the show. She won't guarantee a return to Frozen, but I will push very hard to sing if I can, she says. What are the perks of hosting? Bell, who goes right into filming Season 3 of Nobody Wants This, a week after the Actor Awards, says she's overworked but loves hosting. I had a freaking blast last year as host, Bell says. I like entertaining and hosting things, where I get to be a goofball in my own little show constructed around this prized award honor. Plus, she gets her own parking space at Los Angeles' Shrine Auditorium. It's a great perk because parking in LA is so cattywampus, Bell says. Nobody Wants This star are the world's best award show losers. Bell and the cast of Netflix's Nobody Wants This already have set the template for how to lose gracefully at an award show after being blanked from all 5 categories at last month's Critics' Choice Awards. Bell posted an array of happy pictures at the end of the show on her Instagram page. At the end, bluntly, we were still celebratory, Bell says. We're in the game, baby. What's not to love? Television. JD and Turk set to soar again on Scrubs from Brian Alexander. Of course, Zach Braff and Donald Faison were going to soar in an eagle flight on ABC's Scrubs revival. Middle-aged dangers be damned. 25 years later, after the original Scrubs began on NBC, reunited doctors John J.D. Dorian, who is Braff, and Christopher Turk Falson nostalgically embark on their signature piggyback ride during the 2-episode premiere, 8 Eastern Pacific, Wednesday, February 25th, streaming next day on Hulu. Eagle even flies in the trailer. Naturally, the TV hilarity resulted in a real injury, just not to Braff or Falson, the show stars and executive producers. The stunt performer standing in for Faison wiped out. There was a complication, Faison, age 51, says during a joint USA Today interview. He busted his face on the ground. That's not really a fake stunt, says Braff, age 50, who directed the plot. That guy really took a pancake to the ground and hit his head. And he was like, I'm ready to go again. And we're like, dude, you're bleeding. You need stitches. That's it. We got it. But let's give a hell yeah for the gung-ho comedy effort. Because if you're going to bring Scrubs back, you have to leave real blood on the fake hospital floor. The aughts' favorite medical comedy, created by Bill Lawrence, ruled NBC for 7 wacky seasons, 2001 to 2008, winning a prestigious Peabody Award and earning 17 Emmy Award nominations. The series fizzled on ABC after one season and was canceled in 2010. But viewers stayed loyal and loving, attached to Braff and Faison, the real-life besties at the Comedy Center. The stars hosted their pandemic podcast, Fake Doctors, Real Friends, and starred in surprisingly entertaining T-Mobile commercials. After years of being asked about when Scrubs would be returning, Braff and Faison finally are writing the revival, 16 years after the show's original cancellation. Scrubs somehow features the impossibly busy Lawrence as executive producer alongside the comedy maestro of the song's other hits, Ted Lasso and Shrinking. Bill is definitely overseeing, says Braff, of Lawrence's role. He is the mentor to everyone involved. Bill is doing so many other shows, but he still weighs in. Lawrence's first mandate was to keep the heart in the show and the zaniness in check. When we finished the show before, we were kind of off the rails, Faison says. We had a show where Zach was hiding in a backpack. The show got pretty crazy, Braff says, so we all said, let's reground and put it back in reality. The old Scrub set was a real medical center. The decommissioned North Hollywood Medical Center served as the original set of Scrubs, which was sometimes too realistic. People used to wander into the hospital, and we'd have to tell them, this isn't an actual hospital. It was crazy, Faison says. It was especially hard to explain since so many people were walking around in scrubs. The medical center has been converted to condos, so the new series had to start from scratch. Production designers had to painstakingly recreate a full-scale replica of Sacred Heart Hospital, inch by inch, Braff says. After a formative decade on the previous set, the look-alike took some getting used to. Doors that used to lead to rooms now open on a soundstage. The elevators don't work, Faison says. Your brain remembers one thing, but reality says something else. Who returns for the Scrubs revival? The series reunites Sacred Heart favorites, including Sarah Chalke as Elliot Reed, whose marriage to J.D. didn't last to the revival. Judy Reyes returns as Carla Espinosa, whose marriage to Turk has endured. John C. McGinley reappears as the relentlessly intimidating Perry Cox, and then disappears. Spoiler alert, because you're USA Today, Dr. Cox does indeed return, Braff says. Beloved minor characters, such as the unhinged orthopedic surgeon Hooch, Phil Lewis, resurface. But the fresh young cast is key, including new medical interns, including Deshauna Traynor, Amanda Mora, and influencer Dr. Wannabe Sam Tosh. The crazy thing about Ava and Amanda is they were born in 2000, Braff says. So that means when Scrubs first came out, they were in utero. They weren't even born yet. And they have their own language, says Clueless star Faison. It's like when Clueless came out in 1995 and everyone was like, what are they saying? And now I'm like, what are they saying? The older duo, now serving in positions of authority at Sacred Heart, still pull comedy from their real lives. Braff is famously single, while Faison has been married to Cassie Cobb since 2012 and has 2 kids. The stars' family dynamics and personal chemistry are still what viewers see on TV. Bill Lawrence started seeing our friendship develop and the way we were with each other, and started writing to that. We continue to do that, Braff says. Now, I'm still a 50-year-old bachelor, and Donald's married with kids. I still FaceTime Donald 5 times a day, and if I'm lucky, he'll answer once. Perhaps the only thing that isn't realistic about Scrubs is that Faison could totally handle Eagle, unlike his character Turk, who topples under JD's weight, complaining of back issues. Donald is telling any reporter who will listen that even though Turk can't handle Eagle, Donald Faison still can, Braff says. My back isn't that bad, it's starting to shift. I'm 51, Faison says, but I can handle it. I can certainly handle Zach as an Eagle partner. You've been listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes after the hour. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Oasis, Shakira, Pink, Wu-Tang on this year's diverse list of hopefuls. From Melissa Ruggieri. From the sneer of Billy Idol to the smooth shashang of Sade, the 2026 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominees amplify the institution's commitment to recognizing a diverse slate. Of this year's crop of 17 hopefuls, 10 are appearing on the ballot for the first time and span rock, hip-hop, pole, soul, and Latin music. To be eligible for a nomination, the artist or band must have released its first commercial recording at least 25 years before the nomination. Here are the 2026 nominees: The Black Crowes, Jeff Buckley, Mariah Carey, Phil Collins, Melissa Etheridge, Lauryn Hill, Billy Idol, INXS, Iron Maiden, Joy Division / New Order, New Edition, Oasis, Pink, Sadie, Shakira, Luther Vandross, and Wu-Tang Clan. The artists making their first appearances are Buckley, Collins, Etheridge, Hill, INXS, New Edition, Pink, Shakira, Luther Vandross, and Wu-Tang Clan. This is the 3rd consecutive year for Carey and Oasis to make the shortlist, and the 2nd consecutive year for Black Crowes and Billy Idol. Iron Maiden was previously tapped for contention in 2021 and 23, Joy Division / New Order in 2023 and 25, and Sadie in 2024. Those selected for Entity as performer inductees will be announced in April, as well as inductees entering the Rock Hall in the categories of Musical Influence, Musical Excellence, and the Ahmet Ertegun Award, the latter given to non-performers. An international panel of more than 1,200 artists, historians, and music industry professionals will vote using criteria including an artist's impact on music culture and influence on other musicians, as well as the scope and longevity of their career and body of work. This year's induction ceremony will take place in the fall, with exact dates, locations, and ticket information to be announced. Here's a movie review. Elvis is epic as the king holds court in his prime, from Brian Truitt. Think about how many people attended Taylor Swift's worldwide Eras Tour. That's a fairly large number, right? Now, think about how many people still remember seeing Elvis Presley live and in person. That's likely not a very big number at all, and one steadily decreasing as time goes on. That's why director Baz Luhrmann's epic Elvis Presley in Concert, 3.5 stars, rated PG-13 in IMAX theaters now, nationwide, February 27th, is so special and so, well, epic. The electrifying combo of documentary and concert film showcases the king of rock and roll at his creative zenith during his 70s, Las Vegas residency, and early 70s tours. And more importantly, showcases Presley in all of his jump-suited splendor as both cultural icon and cool guy. It's an essential watch for every music fan, even if you're not an Elvis junkie. And a Presley file I am not. The most into Elvis I've ever been was as a kid in the 1980s, somewhat obsessed with him not actually being dead, reading books about how he was living in Hawaii or something. But watching Epic, you get it. You get him. You get why teenage girls went berserk when he shook his hips, and why people just went mad everywhere he went for decades. You also get, in his own words, a glimpse into Presley truly was that no other documentary or film has ever captured the same way. Epic is light years better than Luhrmann's recent Elvis biopic, and it's a minor miracle that it exists in the first place. While working on his Austin Butler starring movie, the Australian director unearthed 59 hours of lost footage in an underground Kansas salt mine, restored it, and painstakingly matched it with audio, including new Presley interview material. There's been a lot written and a lot said, but never from my side of the story, Presley says as the film moves through his early controversies and army service, and plants him in Vegas after an unfulfilling stint in Hollywood. The Elvis we see in Sin City is arguably unmatched, with all that musical maturity plus new inspiration after making bad movies. He boasts an infectious demeanor and confidence backstage as he readies the Vegas show set list with his band. He goofs around with fellow musicians, quipping with them about the suggestive lyrics of the Beatles' Something during rehearsal, yet also has fun at the live show with his audience, playfully plopping a blue bra on his head after some lady throws it on stage. The karate moves, unstoppable hips, and physical swagger are there, yet so is some vulnerability and humility, and the musicianship is off the charts. Obviously, there are the Elvis greatest hits, Suspicious Minds, Burning Love, Hound Dog, but Presley slathers his own secret sauce on those by others. It's enlightening to see him put the Elvis spin on the Beatles, Get Back, Ray Charles Is What I Say, or Simon and Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Waters. While the concert footage is jaw-dropping, the spirited renditions of Tiger Man and Polk Salad Annie are worth the price of admission alone. Epic is one of the few times, as with a Marvel or Star Wars movie, where it's worth the extra bucks for an IMAX ticket or getting into your local movie theater's sonically spiffy Dolby Atmos cinema. Usually, with rock docs and their ilk, watching via streaming or waiting to see at home is fine. This is different. On the biggest, best-sounding screen possible, the movie immerses you in Elvis's audience for a monumental music experience. If your boat's not shaking, either because of the energetic tunes or bass lines through the subwoofers, you're not living right. A movie like this is going to bring in older folks, be they Elvis nerds or those who have strong nostalgia for his peers and that time in music. However, it's the kids who can't get enough of the Taylors, Sabrinas, and Chappelles who should see Epic just for the cultural history lesson. It's a fascinating, rousing snapshot of a legend in his prime, coming alive again in a way that makes him just as vital now as he was then. Movies. Teyana Taylor brings her mom energy to award season, from Patrick Ryan. No one shuts down a red carpet quite like Teyana Taylor. This award season, the Harlem native has stopped traffic in Burberry, Schiaparelli, and Tamara Ralph gown as she touts one battle after another, which earned her a Best Supporting Actress Oscar nomination and Golden Globe win. The multifinite credits her panache to her young daughters, Junie, 10, and Rue, 5, with her former husband, Iman Shumpert. "They're my co-stylists," Taylor says with a laugh, chatting by phone the morning after the Super Bowl. "With the big award shows, I design directly with the designer, and then I turn to my babies like, what y'all think about this? Do I do the one with the party in the back or the party in the front?" Her kids even offer their own chic suggestions, like, "Ooh, Mommy, what's this?" Taylor adds. "They're about to be fashionistas. They definitely have final approval on how I walk out the door." Taylor defends her misunderstood Perfidia. Taylor, age 35, is the incendiary heart of Paul Thomas Anderson's awards juggernaut, One Battle, playing the alluring and irrepressible Perfidia Beverly Hills, a militant far-left activist who falls into bed with Leonardo DiCaprio's smitten Pat Calhoun. But Perfidia starts to feel stifled when they have a baby, lonely and retreating inward as Pat pushes her to settle down. And soon, faced with criminal charges and potential prison time, she makes the tough decision to flee the country. The obstinate femme fatale has been criticized by some viewers for abandoning her family, but Taylor believes that Perfidia is a misunderstood and was only doing what she felt was best for her, given the circumstances. What's under-discussed is the compassion and grace for Perfidia, Taylor says. If people really understood the weight of postpartum depression, we wouldn't be seeing these types of complaints about Perfidia. Being a revolutionary is so tied to her identity. When motherhood enters her life, she doesn't know what to do, so she runs. She doesn't feel prepared to play house with a person she feels ignored by. That doesn't make her a bad person. It makes her human, just trying to find her way. In portraying Perfidia, Taylor saw an opportunity to honor the strong, complex women in her own family. Perfidia is a piece of work, but she is also unapologetically herself, Taylor says. That's something. That's instilled in all of the women I love and admire. I see a lot of that in my Nana, my aunts, and my mom, where they're very clear who they are, and they don't allow other people to bring them down. Taylor went to club bed with her kids after the Golden Globes. Although Perfidia disappears after the film's first 40 minutes, her presence still looms large, as Pat and their now teenage daughter, Charlene, Chase Infinity, are forced into hiding and later hunted down by a ruthless army officer, Sean Penn. In the movie's tear-jerking final scene, spoiler alert, Charlene reads a letter from the mother she never knew, imploring her always to fight the good fight. At first, I was like, damn, this would have been dope to actually film this moment. But the voiceover made it even more powerful, Taylor says of recording the scene. The emotion you heard was very real. Both me and Paul were just sitting there crying. I read it as a mother who has 2 beautiful daughters, and I think any parent would read it that way too. Are you happy? Do you have love? Will you try and change the world like I did? That Taylor can convey so much with just the command of her voice is remarkable, says casting director Cassandra Kokindis. You hear the heartbreak, the shakiness, but then the strength. Unless you have a heart of stone, you cannot react to that. In conversation, Taylor sings the praises of both her kids, who are so amazing and emotionally intelligent in the ways that they support her. But they also keep me humble, she jokes. She recalls stopping home after the Golden Globes, but before I could even get to any real parties, it was like, okay, Mommy, you can go out, but can you just read us a bedtime story first? I'm lying in bed with my Golden Globe like, all right, Taylor says. When I tell you I never made it out, she laughs, and they do it to me every single time. I know it's a setup by now. My girls are like, we are the party. We're going to Club Bed. She also brought them along to the Palm Springs International Film Festival, where she was feted through Performance Prize. The moment it was time for me to get my award, these little rascals were literally on their phones, Taylor says. I had to tell them mid-speech, get off them phones. It was just so funny, and it brightened up the whole room that I had this real mom moment in the middle of all this. But that's why I love having them with me, because they calm my nerves. It makes me proud to make them proud. They're everything. The Oscar nominee has so much to give after one battle. Although Hollywood has finally taken notice of Taylor, she has been working persistently for the last 2 decades, choreographing Beyoncé's Ring the Alarm video at just 15, starring in Ye's Fade video at 25, and picking up critics' trophies for her dramatic turn in A.V. Rockwell's 1001 in 2023. Through it all, she strived to remain present and joyful, both qualities that I've always had within me, Taylor says. I have a really tight-knit family who's all about love and affection. Even at a young age, choreographing with different groups, I always had an eye for helping people in their visions. Taylor's positivity is infectious. Her ambitions are many, and she's clearly got so much to give, raves the RIP co-star Ben Affleck. Kokindis, meanwhile, says that hanging out with Teyana is like being in the most comfortable pair of sweatpants you'd ever put on. You're going to laugh, and you're also going to feel more empowered. Having already directed dozens of music videos and short films, the Grammy-nominated singer is now prepping her movie directorial debut, Get Life, expected in 2027, about a New York City subway dancer. Since last summer, she has also been taking online classes through the Auguste Escoffier School of Culinary Arts. I already get down in the kitchen, but I wanted to learn the art of pastry because I love to bake, Taylor says. Although the biggest lessons in culinary school have just been teamwork and leadership, which are very important to me as I navigate my journey as a director. I'm like SpongeBob SquarePants, she adds. I'm going to soak up all the knowledge because the one thing I love most, besides a mother and a daughter, is a student. It's so much fun. My eyes and ears are always open. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 46 minutes after the hour. Now for Section C, which is sports. College basketball. Hoosiers hoops aura dulled. Make no mistake, Indiana is a football school these days, and it's not even close. From Matthew Glentz. Indiana is a football school. It's not even a question. On the same day IU football sold out season tickets in just hours, the men's basketball team, once the school's golden goose, lost to Northwestern for the 6th straight time, while Assembly Hall's balcony seating remained empty. Over the last 20 years, Indiana fans have banked far more core memories from football than basketball. An entire generation has grown up without tasting any sense of sustained hoop success, in a place that worships the sport like no other. While Curt Cignetti flipped the canvas's priorities on its head in the last 2 seasons, the basketball rot was well entrenched. Since 2015, Indiana football has reached the postseason 6 times. Indiana basketball has reached the men's NWCA tournament 4 times. Keep in mind, before Indiana football won this year's national championship, it entered this past season as the losingest program in football subdivision history. And even with that albatross around its neck, football has seen more success over the last decade than its basketball counterpart. If the Hoosiers, 17-11, 8-9, Big Ten, miss out on the NCAA tournament, which looks entirely possible, it would mark the 8th time in the last 10 years Indiana has sat out March Madness. At Indiana, and in an era where it's seemingly harder to miss the tournament than make it with the expanded field of 68. It gets worse. Indiana hasn't reached an Elite Eight since 2002, when the Hoosiers upset top-ranked Duke in the Sweet 16 en route to a national championship game loss to Maryland. Since that run, 60 teams, have reached at least one Elite Eight, including the likes of St. Peter's, Florida Atlantic, George Mason, Loyola Chicago, BCU, Dayton, St. Joseph's, and Davidson. Already on its 6th full-time head coach since firing Bob Knight, Indiana has been chasing ghosts ever since. The Hoosiers' 5 national titles still rank tied for 5th with Duke for most in NCAA history. But the last one was in 1987, and besides that outlier 2002 season under Mike Davis, Indiana hasn't come anywhere close since. Love him or hate him, Knight won. He had a .731 winning percentage and won 11 Big Ten titles and 659 games in his 28 seasons in Bloomington. His successors have won 439 games in 26 combined seasons with just 3 conference titles. Tom Crean came closest to replicating Knight's success. He inherited a program beset by sanctions caused by Kelvin Sampson, won the Big Ten twice, and had Indiana ranked number 1 for 10 weeks in the 2013 season. But his team was undone by a Syracuse zone in March. Meanwhile, Sampson has turned Houston into a team no one wants to play. Archie Miller was supposed to be a home run hit. He wasn't, and has a losing record over 4 seasons at Rhode Island. Indiana next looked to a Bob Knight guy, something a large portion of the fan base had been screaming for. No one else was hiring Mike Woodson, but because his diploma said Indiana, he was their guy. IU fans ran him out of town after missing back-to-back NCAA tournaments. Darian DeVries is the latest to try his hand at getting it right in Bloomington. Indy Star IU insider Zach Osterman had this to say after the latest setback versus Northwestern. To the media, he unpacked calmly what led to that loss. In more private moments, DeVries might have considered in some way the wider lesson. Basketball, in this place and this time, has become harder, much harder than it really ought to be. And restoring even some baseline measure of success here will require meeting a lot of once sacred conventions that are now tired, worn, withered, and perhaps even dead. That's an almighty task. Making too much of any one loss can be dangerous. No single night should act as a referendum on an entire program. It is justifiably difficult for a fan base so so routinely let down by once was its flagship program to stop itself from defaulting towards anger, frustration, and blame. But impatience is a weed, not a flower. It will overrun and smother the garden long before anything blooms. At a certain point, benefit of the doubt runs thin. Impatience becomes ingrained. The sins of prior failures are passed down through the coaching tenures. DeVries carries that weight now. Few of these problems are of his own making. This program's many ills and cultural difficulties predate his coming to Bloomington. These games cannot be referendums, but the relentless eroding of faith makes them so. Indiana basketball is as well resourced as any program in the country, but with the Hoosiers donors getting a taste of unimaginable football success, a lot of the money may be headed across the parking lot from Assembly Hall to Memorial Stadium. The fans have already. Colorado football coach staff distinctive, from Brent Schoenberg. On the eve of his fourth spring football season in Colorado, Coach Deion Sanders has lost another one of his top assistant coaches. This time, defensive coordinator Robert Livingston has left to take an assistant coaching job with the NFL's Denver Broncos. He'll be replaced by former Virginia Tech defensive coordinator Chris Marve, who already was on staff as the team's new linebackers coach. The change was confirmed on February 25th by Three Pregame Network, one of Sanders' favored YouTube channels. The promotion of Marve means Colorado will have a black head coach, Sanders, black defensive coordinator, Marve, and black offensive coordinator, Brennan Marlin. A breakthrough in a sport where there were not any black head coaches in major college football until 1979, 110 years after the start of it. There are 13 black head coaches in major college football in 2026, but none have offensive and defensive coordinators who also are black, according to USA Today's sports research. It's not clear how many other times this has happened at the highest level of college football, but it is rare. In 2012, Stanford also had a black head coach, David Shaw, with an offensive coordinator, Pep Hamilton, and defensive coordinator, Derek Mason, who also are black. Big changes under Deion Sanders as spring blooms. Livingston's departure comes as Colorado prepares to start spring football practice March 2nd with 47 new transfer players and several new coaches, including new offensive coordinator Marlin. It's also the latest in a churn of top coaches to leave Colorado under Sanders. Since his hiring in December 2022, Sanders has had 3 offensive coordinators and now 3 defensive coordinators, including Marve. Several left for better or similar jobs. Timeline of Sanders' coaching changes at Colorado. Sean Lewis served as offensive coordinator for Sanders for the first 8 games of Sanders' first season in 2023, before getting demoted from play-calling duties in favor of former NFL head coach Pat Shurmur. Lewis then left to become head coach at San Diego State. Shurmur served as an offensive coordinator in late 23 and 2024, when Colorado finished 9-4, but he was also demoted from play-calling duties after a blowout loss at Utah in 2025, when the Buffs finished 3-9. His contract was not renewed after the season. Former Sacramento State head coach Brennan Marlin was hired as offensive coordinator to replace Shurmur after the 2025 season. On defense, Charles Kelly served as coordinator for 1 season. in 2023 before leaving to take a similar job at Auburn. He now is head coach of Jacksonville State in Alabama. Livingston, a longtime NFL assistant coach, replaced him as a defensive coordinator in 2024 when his team led the Big 12 conferences in quarterback sacks, 39, but then regressed during his second season in 2025. The Buffs finished tied for 14th out of 16 teams in the Big 12 in quarterback sacks in 2025, 13. Colorado also ranked 11th nationally, 10 points allowed per game at 30.5. According to terms in his contract, Livingston would owe Colorado $160,000 to break his contract with the school to take an assistant coaching job in the NFL. At Denver, Livingston will work under defensive coordinator Vance Joseph, a former Colorado quarterback and former Denver Broncos head coach. The Buffs finished spring football with an inter-squad practice in Boulder on April 11th. Athletes speak up in support of women's hockey team, from Greta Cross. Retired American soccer players Abby Wambach and Julie Foudy said they wish the U.S. men's hockey team had rejected President Donald Trump's offer to visit the White House after their gold medal win and took accountability for their response to the president's comments about also having to invite the women's team. Stop laughing, don't laugh, and just, I don't know, knock it all the hell way off, Wambach said during a recent episode of her Welcome to the Party podcast with Foudy. That's how I feel. Stop laughing at things that aren't funny. Following an Olympic win for the men's hockey team, Trump spoke to the players on a locker room phone call, inviting the team to the State of the Union address on February 24th, which most of the players accepted. The president briefly mentioned the women's hockey team, which also brought home gold, saying he had to invite them too or he'd be impeached. The comment sparked a collective laugh among the men's hockey team, which has not been received well by many female athletes or fans. Foudy said though she can understand that the men may have been caught up in the moment after the big win, she wishes more accountability would have been taken in the aftermath. When realizing what happened in its full capacity, the thing that sticks with us is, how do you not then say that was wrong? We shouldn't have done that, Foudy said. You should reject the offer to go to the State of the Union, and instead, many of them accepted it because now you're not apologizing. You're doubling down. Hockey's Kelly Panik. Don't know why we expect differently. Fellow Olympian Kelly Panik echoed her women's hockey teammate Hillary Knight's comments this week. Our experience with the men's team are different, I think, and that's something we all know, being there, what it felt like to have their support throughout the tournament, Panik said during a recent interview. As for the men's call with the president, Panik said she wasn't surprised by it. I don't know why we expect differently, she says with a nervous laugh. I think for us, it's just about getting back to the focus on our team and what our team accomplished. Rugby's Alana Meyer, not particularly shocked, but definitely disappointed. Olympian gold medalist and professional rugby player Alana Meyer took to her Instagram story on February 25th to share a short, straightforward message. For real, I'm not particularly shocked, but definitely disappointed. Soccer's Megan Rapinoe. Hell no. During a news conference on February 25th, retired American soccer player Megan Rapinoe said the wretched phone call with the president should not overshadow the historic win. I think everybody who watched that clip or saw that moment said, hell no. You might not be for everybody, whatever, but you're for us. You're our hero. You're here in Seattle. You're ours in America, she told members of the women's hockey team. Thank you for this incredible moment that you gave us that will be memories for the rest of our lives. Men's backup goalie comments on team's reaction during the call, from Marcus Smith. NHL players are back at practice with their teams as the athletes gear up for the resumption of the NHL regular season. Jeremy Swayman, who was a backup goaltender for the U.S. men's ice hockey team that won gold at Milan Cortina, rejoined the Boston Bruins a day after going to Washington, D.C., and visiting the White House and appearing at the State of the Union with most of his teammates February 24th. During media availability February 25th, Swayman was asked about the team's reaction to a remark made by President Donald Trump about the U.S. women's national ice hockey, which also won gold. Swayman said the U.S. men's team should have reacted differently and voiced his support for the U.S. women's team. Yeah, we should have reacted differently, Swayman told reporters. We know that we are so excited for the women's team. We have so much respect for the women's team. And to share that gold medal with them is something that we're forever grateful for. He added, now that we're home, we get to share that together forever and see the incredible support that we have from the USA and sharing this incredible gold medal. What did President Trump say about the women's ice hockey team during postgame call? After the U.S. men's ice hockey team won the gold medal, beating Canada 2-1 in overtime in Milan, FBI Director Kash Patel was celebrating with the team. Trump called to send a congratulatory message to the gold medal recipients. What would really be cool, and we'll do the White House next time. We'll just have some fun. We have medals for you guys, Trump said on the call. And we have to, I must tell you, we're going to have to bring the women's team. You do know that. He continued, I do believe I probably would be impeached if the women's team wasn't invited. Members of the U.S. men's team ice hockey had a chuckle about the remark. Their reaction was met with backlash from supporters of the women's team. Men's team responds to backlash. U.S. men's ice hockey team hero Jack Hughes, who scored the overtime goal to hand the USA the gold medal, was also asked about the reaction. People are so negative about things. I think everyone in that locker room knows how much we support the women's team, how proud we are of them, and we know the same way we feel about them, they feel about us, Hughes said. Swayman was apologetic for the way the men handled themselves. He described the White House visit, though, as an incredible honor. In the White House, we all were there to represent our country celebrate gold medals for the United States, Swayman said. That was something that we really embodied, and we're really grateful to be a part of. Hillary Knight hopes reaction a learning point, from Megan Hall. Olympian Hillary Knight responded to President Donald Trump's viral call with the U.S. men's hockey team on ESPN on February 25th. I thought it was sort of a distasteful joke, and unfortunately, that is overshadowing a lot of the success of just women at the Olympics carrying for Team USA and having amazing gold medal feats, she said on SportsCenter. We're just focusing on celebrating the women in our room, the extraordinary efforts, and continue to celebrate 3 gold medals in program history, as well as the double gold for both men's and women's at the same time, and really not detract from that with a distasteful joke. During a locker room call with the men's hockey team, President Donald Trump invited the players to the State of the Union address February 24th. He briefly mentioned the women's hockey team, which also won gold during the Olympics, saying he had to invite them too or he would be impeached. The men's hockey team laughed at the president's remark, which Knight addressed in her conversation with ESPN. I think there's a genuine level of support there and respect between the men's and women's teams. And I think that's being overshadowed by sort of a quick lapse, Knight said. The guys were in a tough spot, so it's a shame that some of the storyline and narrative has kind of blown up and overshadowing kind of their connection and genuine interest in one another and cheering one another on. Trump's now viral call generated varying reactions and backlash, including rapper Flavor Flav extending an invitation to the women's team for an alternative celebration. Team USA's women declined the president's invitation, citing timing and previous commitments. Trump said February 24th they would soon visit the White House. Several members of the men's team eventually addressed the chatter surrounding the call, including Olympian Jack Hughes and his brother Quinn Hughes. People are so negative about things. I think everyone in that locker room knows how much we support them, how proud we are of them, and we know the same way they feel about us. We feel about them, they feel about us, Jack Hughes said. You know, we're really happy for them, Quinn Hughes said. Obviously, a lot going on social media right now surrounding our team and their team. But in the last couple of summers, we've done a lot of training with them and got to know a lot of those girls really well. Knight shared that men's and women's teams have supported another in the Olympic Village and on the global and professional stages. She says she looks forward to the relationships continuing. She also revealed what she thinks the moment taught people. I think this is just a really good learning point to really focus on how we talk about women, not only in sport, but in industry, Knight said. Women aren't less than, and our achievements shouldn't be overshadowed by anything else than how great they are. College men's basketball. Crazy February blurs March Madness outlook, from Jordan Mendoza. Just when it felt like 3 months is enough time to get a sense of the college men's basketball season, the penultimate month ends up with shifting it just before the madness begins. While world-class athletes in Milan and Cortina grab the spotlight in the 2026 Winter Olympics, college basketball chugged along, and plenty happened. From late-season surges to some perplexing stumbles, it had it all. Even though February is the shortest month of the year, there was enough time for seasons to change heading into the all-important March. Selection Sunday is less than 3 weeks away. Here are college basketball's biggest swings that happened. Our number 1 seeds locked up. No spots are secure until the bracket is revealed, but it feels safe to say 3 of the number 1 seeds are spoken for. Duke, Michigan, and Arizona have separated themselves as the top title contenders, with stunning resumes. They are the only 3 teams with at least 10 Quad 1 wins. They are the only Power 4 conference teams with under 3 losses. The Blue Devils and Wolverines just played a thrilling marquee matchup that Duke won, and a rematch could be in store in the Final Four, a Florida repeat. When Florida won the title in 2006, it followed it up with a repeat championship. A perfect February start has the Gators thinking deja vu is in store. The Gators are 6-0 this month and have won 12 of their last 13 games to surge to the top of the SEC, forgetting the shaky start to the season. Not only are they winning, but they're doing it in dominant fashion. On a 7-game streak with 4 quad wins, they have won by an average of 21.6 points, with the offense really flourishing. It took time, but UF looks exactly how many expected it to ahead of the season. And again, this doesn't seem like a team you want to play in the tournaments. SEC weirdness. Florida's a proven contender, but everyone else in that division is making it hard to figure out if they belong. One moment they're on a winning streak, the next losses keep piling up. Alabama has used a 6-game winning streak to jump to second place, with Arkansas and Tennessee right behind. Then there's Texas A&M, a contender before a 4-game skid dropped it out of the picture. Texas started winning to get in the tournament frame. Vanderbilt's early magic has worn off, and Kentucky keeps flip-flopping. It's become a mystery, and it's not worth trying to understand. St. John's is here for good. The concrete jungle magic is back, with St. John's riding to the top of the Big East with a 13-game winning streak that included a February 6th victory over UConn. That streak was snapped on February 25th by UConn, but the Red Storm are still formidable. The defense has really stepped up, capturing its identity after it was a major concern early in the season. The resurgence has completely flipped the outlook of where St. John's could be in the tournament. When the month began, it was a number 5 seed with no outside shot of being in the overall top 16. Now the Red Storm have asserted themselves as a top 4 seed and are making the case to be able to play close to home, not leaving the Northeast. What happened to BYU? At the end of January, BYU was in the conversation for a top 3 seed in what was shaping up to be the best season in Cougars history. Now it's looking like it could end in what if. After a 17-2 start, BYU is 3-5 since losing to the Big 12's elite teams. That puts into question whether the Cougars can contend among the top title contenders. A much-needed win over Iowa State on February 21st was followed by a home blowout by UCF. A rough time for the Cougars has dropped them all the way down to a projected number 6 seed. A.J. Dybantsa can do it all, but he needs help, and plenty more fell on his shoulders when Richie Saunders was lost for the season. With a tougher draw on the horizon, BYU will have to work harder to complete its dream campaign. Injuries. Speaking of injuries, they've really hit some tournament hopefuls, drastically changing team outlooks. Saunders is a major one at BYU, and so is J.T. Toppin, who is out for the season, severely hurting Texas Tech's legit title hopes. North Carolina has felt the effect of star freshman Caleb Wilson's injury, and Kansas continues to navigate the enigma of Darren Peterson. Given the high-profile injuries happening, how much weight will they carry with the selection committee in terms of seeding? Bracket shifts. Several teams saw their projected seed lines change in the last 4 weeks, good and bad. Florida and St. John's headline the positive movement, along with Purdue, UCF, North Carolina State, Texas, and Miami of Florida, have done work to feel more comfortable with their tournament hopes, while TCU and Santa Clara have put themselves into the conversation. On the opposite end, Clemson, SMU, Georgia, Auburn, and Indiana are headed in the wrong direction. How the bubbles changed. Miami is a near tournament lock with a 5-1 mark in February. The only blemish, a close loss to Virginia. Joining the fold are TCU and Santa Clara, picking up steam to the last 4 in territory. Not quite in the field, but now in the conversation are VCU and Cal, picking up steam. Then there's those falling rapidly. That starts with Southern Cal and San Diego State, each going on losing skids that has taken them out of the projected bracket. Teams on the fringe like Seton Hall, Missouri, and Virginia Tech are starting to see their hopes fade away thanks to inconsistent play. Now isn't the time to have hot and cold streaks. It's stay hot or see your NCAA tournament hopes freeze up.
The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents